All right, we're about to watch Triad Wars 16 Round 2, Tezuka versus Delial. They just played a fascinating game for the weekly open that I'm going to quickly describe again. Deli has no obvious starter, but plays a starter that's a mid-strength starter that's hard for Tezuka to deal with. His cards don't interact well. It's really uncomfortable for Tezuka to go left. It's at 7. And Tezuka plays a response mid-strength starter in 3 using a card he doesn't really need that is similarly really difficult for Deli to interact with. I think these were very good first moves. Then Deli takes in 6, saying, I don't want to have to interact with this in the future. And Tezuka has a bunch of options, but he decides to go in 9, which I think was a really good choice. It wasn't the one I wanted, but having looked at it, I assumed Deli had an easy time in 8, but I was wrong. And Deli realizes he can't go 8. He also discounts 2 incorrectly, but he sees something scary there. And he plays this panic move in 4, but it's not a loss. It's a good move. He doesn't play the move in 8 that would have blown it. Tezuka finds the max pressure response where Deli has to be very careful to hold the tie. Of course, there's 3 moves left, so Deli plays the tie. And then Tezuka misses a same and loses the game. But I thought it was a tremendous game from both sides, really well played, really posing interesting problems for each other. Just think it was an interesting game. And also, I think Deli plays lots of games where he's definitely behind early, and by the end, his opponent has to find a single tie. And it felt like Tezuka did that to Deli, where after Deli's starter, Tezuka was in a difficult position, and with Tezuka's reply to the starter and then his move 4, suddenly Delial was panicking and having to find only moves to survive. And then Tezuka's mind went left, deserted him for the ending. But I thought it was actually a really nice game by Tezuka, and one that, despite the result, should kind of be proud of because Deli plays a lot of these games on other people, but rarely is it done to Deli, where clearly Deli is a little bit ahead, and by the end, he's having to find the ties. So I thought it was a really cool game, and I also don't really think Deli did anything wrong. Maybe there was something better on move 3, but I think marginal at best. I think just a very nice game for Tezuka that somehow went wrong. That said, I also talked a bunch about my expectations for this game, which is that in general, I think Tezuka is better in hands than random. And while Delial should be the somewhat better player overall, it should be really close in hand games. But I think no combo favors Deli. I think making it a more technical game is a little in Deli's favor. We did see Tezuka screw up a technical aspect at the end of the last game. And I also think this specific rule set, there is not much room to be interesting or creative with hands, which doesn't make it a bad rule set. I think the games have been good so far. I've enjoyed it. But the rule set is level 5, no same plus plus wall, no combo, no 7/6/6s, no 7/7s, all unique number combos. And in basically every game we've seen, I can bring up the thing, but basically we've seen, you know, one hand 7/6/5/4, 7/6/4/4, 7/6/5/3, 7/6/4/3, 7/6/5/2. Faced against 4 of the exact same number combos, but instead of the 7/6/4/4, a 6/6/6/3. One player ran with 2/6/6/6s. Most have run with either all 7/6/XX or one 6/6/6/6. 3/6s. I can't count when saying numbers. But there's been some variation. DJ and Vid both included a 6/6/6. Vid went with a rare. That has been a rare choice, and I think rightfully so, though Vid did end up winning with it. But most games have been 4 7/6s and one 6/6/6, with an exception for Sachi, who used 2 6/6/6s, and Vid, who threw in rares instead of one of the 7/6s. That's basically been, I think that's been every single game has fit that. And Stuff ran no 6/6/6s. So there is a question of kind of how many of the 7/6s do you run? Is it all 5 cards? Is it 4? The lowest we've seen is 3. Vid and Sachi only used 3. Stuff used all 5. Everyone else has used 4. But it's pretty limited. You want to have directional strength. Cliffy got in trouble because he repeated where he was directionally good uh, rather than varying strength. But within that, there's just not that much to do. So we have an interesting question that I think emerges here. Is the reason Tezuka is so good at hand games because he is a very good hand maker, or is it because he is very good at dealing with balanced hands with cards that fit together? Is it because he's good at building the hands, or because hand type games where the cards fit together a lot better than random games, is he exceptionally good at dealing with those? Unclear. All right, let's see what we see. Tezuka has joined the only 3-7-6 club, joining Vid and Sachi. He has gone with a rare, joining Vid. He has also gone for lower raw power cards, which is interesting. He has gone for 7652 and 7651 when 53 and 54 were available. My first thought is he is doing this to play off his rare. It is not obvious these numbers do play off the rare, but one thing to note is he has numbers in his hand that his rare can take. For instance, if he started 1, 5, 6, 7, and 9, his rare has captures back in both squares. And that's pretty rare. Normally rares have only one capture, but his hand is set up in a way where he has potential to have more recaptures, where his rare has potential to have captures multiple directions. And that is not very common. So that's kind of interesting to see. I don't know what to make of that. It's a curious idea. I think Deli has gone much more traditional. Also, if we look at Tezuka's hand, he is lacking a 7 up. Worth noting. Deli's hand, he has a 7 in every direction with 2 sevens facing down. He has Tonberry, which, if you think about its power, is truly the cipher of level 9. I had a Tonberry cipher hand back in the day on level 10. I enjoyed playing. But Deli has very much gone for let's do the 7-6 army and just the most kind of pure power things available. I'm a little skeptical of the 666s. The way stuff went with all 5-7-6s is probably my instinct as well. Though what I'd probably do is 4-7-6 corners and then one side to side, which you could say is what Deli did, and that is true. But I would probably have my 4-7-6 corners have the 4 sevens in different directions. Well, two of his 7-6 corners have a 7 in the same direction, and his side to side 7 card is unique in its direction for a 7. And for me, that seems very slightly unbalanced, but not a big deal. As Akiyama has shown repeatedly, you can play hands that aren't quite the traditional pairings of cards, and it's just as good as the traditional pairings. You don't have to be a stickler on these things. Also, one of the reasons to be a stickler on these things is if you end up like, say, you want to keep your down-facing sweepers, so you keep 4-6-7-4 and 3-5-7-6 for the end game as the bottom of the board fills up. Sometimes you can be punished by having redundant numbers, right? Having only sevens down. Or if you keep 3-5-7-6 and 7-3-4-6, you're going left, you only have sixes left, and something can sweep you in the end game. But with no combo, being swept like that is less of a risk. Like the cost of being swept is so much lower that I wouldn't be fussed about this. But the reason I'd want to vary it that way is so if I'm keeping my cards that are down sweepers, they don't have redundant things, so they are unlikely to be swept. That kind of thing, right? Well, so like my goal in this is the cards I am likely to hold on to at the same time don't have redundant issues. They can do distinct things. So like any two adjacent corners, I think you're somewhat likely to have as your last two cards. And I don't want them to have the same numbers because I don't want them to be swept. Again, this matters less in combo games and is probably not something to get that concerned about anyway. Overall, I suspect Deli has the better hand here. I am extremely distrustful of rares, as always, and Tezuka has not only taken a low power card in a rare, but he has surrounded it with other low power cards, right? Lower numbers than are needed. The question is, will he play them well enough, or will he have found sufficient synergies with them that actually it doesn't matter and they're great. And one thing in this rule set that is kind of interesting is, and maybe this makes it a really good strategy, is two things. One is if you're on first turn, sometimes you just want a weak corner. Like I like Deli's hand, but I have no idea where he starts, right? Let's say none of the strong corners appeal. Anytime you play a weak corner, you are unbalancing the hand, right? If you play Tonberry King and 9, or you play Mist Thingy 7 3 4 6 and 1, your hand is left quite unbalanced because you've suddenly directed the game towards where you have given up the most power. This is an issue with hands in weak corners. And I think historically, Tezuka has done a really good job of building hands where he can play a weak corner without unbalancing himself. And this was something both Tezuka and Piggy talked about during TTAC when they met in the finals, but they had also been kind of allies the whole way, is running two cards for the same corner such that you can play one of them as a weak corner and leave your hand balanced. I remember conversations about that. Really interesting hand making stuff. So Tezuka has given himself a card that he is happy to use as a weak corner, that in fact, because it's so weak, he could play as a weak corner in two different squares and be satisfied with it as a potential starter and not have to worry about other things. But the other thing it's done, and this is not how we saw Vid use it, but it is available. What if Tezuka, it also has two potentially half strong corners, one is covered, but what if wherever Deli goes, Tezuka plays 3A2 1 and 7? He creates a problem for Deli's hand that is really hard for Deli to deal with. Deli has no way to set up either in 5 or in 9 against 3A2 1. So almost whatever Deli does, Tezuka can play 7 and say next turn I will go 4 and I will have created a safety. So what does Deli do? Deli blocks 7. Really interesting. Yeah, this makes so much sense. Um, Tezuka has brought in a hand that does creative different things and can create a specific difficulty. It has a way to have an easy starter and a way to challenge any opposing starter in 3 or 7. Deli just so happens to have 3 already covered, so he gets rid of 7. Okay. Now, Tezuka has full coverage of the card in 7, but that's not the point. The point of this move, Deli can recapture. They both have full captures. Normally, if both have full captures, that favors second turn. Um, but the point is not the full captures. The point is getting rid of the 7 square, in my opinion. Now, it is the starter that Deli is most prepared to have both captures back on, right? Um, the only card that can land in its natural strong starter corner. And again, because Deli's hand is balanced, he wants to play cards where they fit because that will leave squares open for his other cards where they fit as well, right? With a balanced hand like this, Deli wants his strong corners to land in their strong corners, and this is the only one well supported. But I think the really, and maybe that's how we got to it, but I think the really important thing is it blocks 7. And unlike in a combo game where you play Poo Poo in 7 and then lock it in 4, it can be really hard to lock it in because it's so easy to overpower. Here, that doesn't matter. You're not weak to combo potential. Really interesting move. Now, if you're Tezuka, you want to check if you should attack it immediately, but I don't think you should. I think the conclusion you quickly realize is I do not want to attack this immediately. One thing you could do is something like 3A2 1 and 5, and this feels to me in Tezuka style. Specifically saying you don't have one card for both 4 and 8. So if we just leave those open, it's fine for me at the end. You hold on to 5 6 4 7 and one of 4 6 7 4 3 5 7 6. And on the last turn, second to last turn, you have to use one of them, and then I play forcing you to land the other, and I get my time. Okay, that's one way to think. This also feels like it kind of fits how Tezuka tends to think. Gives him a nice plus wall in 6. It gets rid of a card he probably doesn't want at this point in his hand. Another way of thinking would be to throw it in 3, but I think weak corners are not as desirable in non-combo second turn, because at some point you need to play something the opponent can't take, and going in 3 is something the opponent will always be able to take no matter what. So I think that is less desirable. Um, One reason I really like this poo poo plan from Tezuka of wanting to land 3A, 2, 1, and 7 is because it guarantees there's something Deli can't take. You can immediately neutralize first turn's advantage. Um, the more I think about it, the more enthused I am as a concept, but Deli has created a real difficulty. Now, Tezuka should be fine here. Most moves should tie. This should not be a theoretical problem, but it is a significant practical problem. 6725 is also now the card you need for 8, and it's not actually that good a card to hold on to. So I would actually consider 6725 and 9. In my opinion, the best way to meet a corner starter is an adjacent corner on this set. But the problem is, then Deli's 4674 is just tremendous. Um, so I would be looking for adjacent corners. Maybe 1567 and 9. Maybe 1567 and 9. Because you create a square Deli doesn't have. And one of the reasons adjacent corners are great is because if you play, say, in 3, say you play something in 3 that Deli doesn't currently have, he has multiple options to set up against it in 1 and 5. If you play something in 9 or in 1 with something impossible to take facing the corner Deli's played in 7, then the only way Deli can set up is 5, but that gives you a completely free card in 8, and you should be doing well. So playing in 1 or 9 in general is my instinct, and if you can play something in 1 or 9 that Deli cannot take, that's the ideal version. But I'm also really drawn to, you want to get Poo Poo out of your hand. It is a bad card. I hate that card. I think it has had really interesting applications this game, or conceptually, but I hate the card, and anytime it can't land great, I still kind of think you want to play it. So we do see Poo Poo in 5, which was my, I think, officially predicted move, though I did not say I officially predicted, but clearly that's what I was expecting. I was just saying I would also really strongly consider moves like 1567 and 9, or maybe 6373 and 1, though that gives up capture threats in 4, so probably not that one. But 1567 and 9 I think was worth considering. Because again, I think adjacent corners in this non-combo rule set are the way to apply pressure. And that is what we saw Vid win with in a very nice game. If we look at how the games were won so far, a corner starter beat a capture. Another corner starter beat a card next to it, technically not a capture. But 2 of first turn's wins, first turn's 2 wins on the rule set, were both facing cards next to it, where the player could then lock in their starter and be in good shape. First turn's losses, DJ lost to Vid against an adjacent corner, and Selder lost to Smokes against an adjacent corner. I think we've seen corner starters be the prevalent choice here, but I think adjacent corners often give second turn an advantage. The problem for Tezuka is he did not have a way to do so, right? He kind of both needed to use 3A, 2, 1, and you want to play an adjacent corner, but you couldn't do both very well. Poo Poo's natural landing square was in 1, but 4674 dominates that. So, yeah. One thing, what was my story earlier? I was trying to talk about this. I don't remember if it was this video or last. Vishwanathan Anand's files. He plays a match against Kramnik. He has to get Kramnik out of his comfort zone. Kramnik is really good in steady, slight advantage positions. So Anand takes risks to get into much more complex positions and ends up winning the match in fantastic fashion. Plays a wonderful match. The next World Championship match he plays is against Veselin Topalov. And I'm going to call him Topalov because that's how I'm used to saying it, but I think it's pronounced Topalov. But Topalov is a player who will always create complications. No matter how dry the position, he will find a way to spice it up. You do not have to seek out complications against Topalov. There will always be chances for both players, because that's how Topalov plays and always will. So, against Kramnik, he played the spiciest, most complicating stuff possible. Against Topalov, he played a much more dry style because he knew it would reach complex positions anyway, and he didn't want it to reach really complex positions, so he had to make sure to keep it under control. Um, they were also really scared because in 2008 against Kramnik, they had the best supercomputers basically. And in 2010, Topolov had the best supercomputers, which meant if you're going into something really sharp, the other person might have prepared it significantly better than you did, and you might just be dead with no way of having checked it just because their computers are stronger. So they really, in the first match, they were happy to go into these sharp things where they thought our prep is going to be at least as good as the opponent's. And in the second match, it was we cannot trust our super sharp prep to necessarily be better. So anytime he knows what we're playing, like we cannot play something that he's predicted and is sharp. If he's predicted it, it has to be really dry because in a dry position, if he's found something we haven't, we should be able to recover. But in a sharp position, we're dead. So thinking about this match between Tezuka and Deli, these are both players. This is a rule set that has the potential to be dry, no combo. But these are both players that seek out complexity and challenging ideas. And so this will never be dry. This is Topolov versus Topolov, right? Which I don't mean to be insulting because kind of no one likes Topolov, but I'm saying like stylistically, it's funny. Another thing about the Anand Topolov match is like Kramnik, who Anand had beaten in the last match, comes out of the woodwork to be like, "Can I help you? Is there anything I can do to help? I really want you to beat Topolov." Kasparov, who lost a world championship match to Kramnik and then retired, comes out of the woodwork to be like, "Anand, can I help you? You must beat Topolov," right? All the kind of big famous names contact Anand right before or during the match to be like, "Please let us help you. Topolov has to lose." Um, Now, from this book, I think Kasparov, who had been retired for a while, was not very helpful. It sort of tried to sugarcoat it, but from what it said, really sounded like basically when Anand lost, Kasparov would be like, "Why are you such an idiot?" which is not actually helpful. And when Anand was doing well, Kasparov would be like, "Oh, you can have all my files," but all his files were 5 to 15 years out of date. And the problem is, with the advancement of computers, that meant they were really out of date, right? Preparation had just advanced a bunch. Kramnik, a currently active player, his files were much more important. And one kind of funny story, at least to me, from that match is Kramnik had played a match against Topolov, which was the reason Kramnik hated Topolov. Look up Toilet Gate if you want a goofy story, which we will, I guess, not get into here. But Kramnik hated Topolov, so he offered help to Anand. And then in game three, Anand plays a line. I think it was game three. I might have the number wrong. Anand, I just read the book about this, so it's in my head. Read it yesterday. Anand plays a line that Kramnik had used against Topolov, and Kramnik freaks out and sends a message, and Anand holds the draw. It's a line for black. The goal was to hold a draw. And he sends panicked messages to Anand during and after the game. Anand obviously can't see them till after, but to Anand's team, going, "You can't play this. It's refuted. It doesn't work. I know I played it a few years ago, but I've since realized it doesn't work." And Anand's team goes, "Our theory kind of says it does work. What do you mean?" And Kramnik is like, "No," and he sends a monograph about it. And they look at it and they're like, "No, our work is better than this." And Kramnik's like, "Oops, I sent the wrong file," and sends a way longer file. And they're like, "Oh shit, he's right. This does not work." And they try to repair it and they try to repair it, but they can't find a way to fix this opening variation. But Anand is really happy with the draw he got and kind of wants to play it again. And they're like, "Kramnik, do you think we can play this?" And he's like, "Well, it doesn't work, but also I think Topolov's an idiot." Note, Delial again gets rid of the square that Tezuka has play and he doesn't, right? Tezuka wanted to play 3A, 2, 1, and 7. Deli gets rid of it. Tezuka has this plus wall in 6 Deli doesn't have. Deli gets rid of it. Deli is playing on that. It's not always the way to play, but I think it is how most advanced moves are found. And Deli's moves look pretty normal, so it's easy to miss. But I think Deli is playing on a very advanced level of I'm going to get rid of every square that you have good play on and I don't. And I'm going to use that to try to create squares I have good play on. Notice Deli now is a capture on 3, and Tezuka doesn't. Now, Tezuka has safety in 9. which I'd be quite tempted to take if I was Tezuka. It does give Deli 6 forever, but you take 9. If Deli plays 8, you have 4, and it's hard for you to be in all that bad shape. But actually, maybe you're swept in that endgame. Ooh, this is very clever. So if 1, 5, 6, 7, 9, say Deli goes 5, 6, 4, 7, 8. Tezuka, ooh, no, Tezuka does have a move there. Or does he? No. Tezuka goes either 6, 7, 2, 5 with a plus and 4, or 6, 3, 7, 3. And Deli goes 4, 7, 6, 4, and 1. And 3, 5, 6, 7 sweeps anything Tezuka can put in 2 that captures. Well, Tezuka, no, sorry, Tezuka does not have a capture in 2, and Delial can take anything he plays in 2. So it's 5-5 at that point. Yeah, Deli wins there. So Tezuka has to be really careful. If he plays 1, 5, 6, 7, and 9, I think 8 is good for Deli. Yeah, this is really nicely figured out. Back to my story, then we'll come back to this. I may have gotten something wrong. That was 30 seconds of analysis. But finishing up the story. So they're like, can we play this? Because Anand really wants to play this. And Kramnik eventually goes, okay, I think it's bad and doesn't work and it loses, but also Topalov is dumb and he won't figure it out, so you can play it. Kramnik really hated Topalov. Topalov was not dumb. Topalov is the third best player of the era after Anand and Kramnik. And I think there's some gap, but there are good arguments that actually it's very close between the three of them. And depending how you count world champions, Topalov is or isn't a world champion. There was a whole schism where there were 2 world champions at the same time, and some people count both lines, some people only count one. If you only count one, most people only count the line that Topalov isn't. So I personally do not think of Topalov as a world champion. I have just realized Tezuka can play 6, 2, 6, 6, and 9. He doesn't. Oh no, that's taken by 5, 6, 4, 7. No, he can't. Okay, back to talking, and then we'll actually focus better. So Topalov, tremendously good player, not an idiot, but Kramnik's. Kramnik, it's funny for him to be like, he's dumb, you can play it. But also, this was a kind of position Topalov wasn't very good at. It was a very dry position, and Topalov excelled in really sharp, combative positions. Which is why Anand's goal was, keep it as dry as possible. It will get sharp because Topalov will find a way to make it sharp, but then you'll have chances, and you don't have to let it get any sharper than that by starting off sharp yourself. So, okay, they play it again, and they hold a draw. And then Kramnik's like, you cannot play this again, though, right? This really doesn't work. You cannot play it a third time. Topalov has now had like 6 days to prepare for it. He didn't know you were going to play it, but he's now had lots of time for his team to figure something out. You can't play it again. Anand is like, I got 2 easy draws though. I think I'm going to play it again. And that time he does lose and he does move off it. And at that point, they really freak out because that ends up tying the match and they're not sure what they want to move to. They've committed a lot to this and haven't really gotten ready to play something else. And that's kind of the scariest moment of the match, is losing that game. And while everyone thinks Kramnik is an idiot nowadays because he's gone off on these weird tirades that are nonsense, he was right here. He was right. You probably shouldn't be playing this. It is bad. You probably can get away with it one more game because Topalov's not very good at this kind of line, but you really got to stop after that. You can't play it 3 times. You can play it once because he won't know it's coming. You can play it maybe twice because it takes a while to figure out, but you can't play it a third time. That said, Anand does go on to win the match. And amusingly, another quick story, if you care at all about chess, the Anand team is prepping an opening for the final game, saying, okay, this is the last kind of idea we have left. We think it's good. We can throw it out for a game. And they contact the person who would eventually take the title 3 years later from Anand, Magnus Carlsen, who's one of the top 4 players of all time. But he was very young at this point, still already like top 4 in the world. And they call him and are like, what do you think of this line? And he looks at it for like 30 seconds and goes, well, this looks like shit. And then goes back to playing video games. They end up playing it and winning the key game to win the world championship. All right, there's my random chess stories for today. I just read the book, so it's what's on my mind. But I think like Deli and Tezuka are both Topolovs. They are both going to make the game complicated and interesting. So even without combo, we need not fear anything. Okay. Now I haven't evaluated this move at all, but I want to just immediately say, great job picking 3/9. 9 is the better square on average if you have safety in both. Because against 3, they can go 4, and they have made no structural concessions. 2, if they go for the Q, yes, you've locked in a card first. But 4, no one is locked in a card, should still favor first turn someone. Well, if you go in 9, they have no response that doesn't let you lock in more cards. So 9 is more desirable. But 9 didn't work. And 9 didn't work for tricky reasons. As I said last time talking about Tezuka, his endgame stuff is not always that good, but his middle games is, I mean, it's very good, but it's not always as good as other top players. But his middle game decisions are fantastic, and really see what the key line to the position is. And I think he understood 9 didn't work. But 3 makes sense because it is also safe, and you still have threats in 9 yourself, right? If you go in 9, you have no set threats in 3. If you go in 3, you still have threats in 9. This is a much better way of playing. And I think this should be enough to tie. I think he is out of danger now. For instance, if Deli goes in 4, no matter what Deli plays in 4, I think you can take from 1, making it 5/5, because Deli will have captured 5. Deli goes in 2, capturing 1. You're down 6/4, and you play 6/7/2/5 and 8, and you double capture. You're up 6/4. You cannot lose. You tie because Deli holds on to 5/6/4/7, but you cannot lose. If Deli goes in 2, you're already up 6/4, and you have great cards to put in 4 and 8. You just can't lose there. And if Deli goes in 9, you have anything in 9 covered. You either take with 6/7/2/5 or you take with 6/3/7/3, and importantly, you will still have a card that goes in 4 because both of them fit in 4 that has the double capture if needed. You can't lose there either. Can Deli complicate with something like 4/6/7/4 and 1 at some point? I don't think so. I think you can just block 2 and Deli doesn't have recaptures. Yeah, I think 9 was appealing and didn't work, and Deli set a really clever trap, but Tezuka's playing well. These games are great. The last game between them was great. This game is great. Maybe I'm overhyping this, but I think they're setting and dodging traps. And I think like Deli's move in 7 and Deli's move in 6 look like completely conventional moves. You go 7 because that's the square you have the captures and it's a strong corner. You go 6, setting up a J. But what it actually did was so much more based on what was going on than that, right? 7 was because I need to get rid of 7 for you, and I do actually need to play my strong corners around the squares they're intended for, or they will run out of power. And I needed to block 3A2-1 there. I think 7 was a blocking move. You rarely see blocking moves with strong corners like this, but I think it was a really high level blocking move. I think 7/3/4 and 6/6 was set up something. It said, I have 3 and you don't, but it was a blocking move as well. So both Deli's moves have, I think, been normal looking moves that were also high class blocking moves. So you could easily look at them and be like, normal move, nothing special going on here, but actually they were great moves. Tezuka plays in 5. I didn't realize immediately that 6/7/2/5 now had both 4 and 8, meaning suddenly this card that you kind of have to hold on to because it's your only card for 8, but you don't want to hold on to because it's dead everywhere else facing down left, suddenly has another square it's good in, and you no longer need to get it out of your hand. Excellent idea, right? Because the idea is, and I talked about this a bunch last game, you don't want to be in a situation where all your cards do one thing, because then you need to hold on to all of them, and as soon as a move is made, it's really hard to do anything, and none of them are actually all that good. They only do one thing. You also don't want a game where one of your cards does everything and nothing else does anything, because then it's just impossible to find useful moves with your other cards, and if they can force you to play the good card, you're dead. So what he did was he took the card that was the worst card he needed to hold on to in his hand, 6725, because it has the threat in 8, and he made sure it had another use while getting rid of a card he needed to get rid of. Then Deli goes in 6. Tezuka has safety in 3 or 9. Both are very appealing. One is good, one isn't, but you have to really precisely figure it out to know. Now, maybe he figured it out because he saw, I want to still have threats in 6. I don't want to just give you 6 for nothing. I want to still have threats. Maybe that's the reason. But I think he also realized that 9 was really dangerous, even though when they go 8, you get to go 4, and you're up 6-4 with more cards locked in. You have 2 cards on the bottom, they only have 1. That's usually a clear advantage for second turn, that you get swept by 3-5-7-6 in that endgame. So, in my opinion, this is a fantastically played game so far. Now, the solver will tell us everything's wrong because the solver's a dick, but I actually think this is just a superb game of Triple Triad and really interesting because, like, they're making the normal moves, and it could be the reasoning is the normal reason. Can't rule that out. But what are the best moves possible? It's when the normal move does the normal good things that the normal move should do, but also does all the things that obscure strange moves do that normal moves don't. Like, oftentimes, the reason you play some strange move is because you've calculated a key line and you've realized down the road this square is good for them. I have to get rid of it. And they're doing moves that do that, that get rid of those squares the opponent's going to win on. In every line I calculated on in 9, Deli wins by playing 3-5-7-6 and 3 at the end. Getting rid of all the squares that you're going to lose on while being able to also play the normal moves with the normal benefits of those moves. All right, Deli goes 4. This makes sense. I don't think there were any real testing tries, so as long as you don't lose here, you're making a good move. And I think Tezuka will shortly take in 1, um, making it 5-5. Deli cannot get play in 8 or 9 with combo on. Sometimes you do, but with combo off, Tezuka can go 2, and you just can't capture anything at 5, so you can't possibly do more than tie. So with no combo, the only winning try is 2. Deli goes 2, going up 6-4, and Tezuka goes 6-7-2-5 and 8. You usually want to sequence it 1 and then 8, not 8 and then 1. And if we think about it, we can see why. If you go 6-7-2-5 and 8, you go up 6-4. Deli takes back, it's 5-5. You go in 1, you're up 6-4, and Deli has a double capture in 2. And the key difference is who controls 5 at the end, right? 1 and then 8 ties, 8 and then 1 loses, because if you go 1, they go 2, you go 8, you're the last interactor with 5. If you go 8, they go 9, you go 1, they go 2, they're the last interactor with 5. So in most of these setups, T's, Q's, Z's, S's, all these standard formations, um, if you are sequencing it such that you're going to go in a corner and decide, like 1 and 8 or 2 and 9, huge majority of the time, you start in the corner. If your sequence is 2 and 8, this doesn't apply. If your sequence is 1 and 9, this doesn't apply. But a lot of the times your sequence is 1 and 8 or 2 and 9, and if so, almost always you want to go 1 then 8 or 9 then 2. All right, I'm gonna check Discord because I don't think there's a ton to say on this move. I really hope we don't see Tezuka play a fantastic game and then blow an endgame again, but I don't think we will here. Yeah, he's picked up 6-3-7-3. That's gonna go in 1, and we will be seeing a tie. Let's see what my messages have to say. That one's not triple triad related, so let's do the triple triad ones. That's not too relevant. Deli wonders if he should have started 4 rather than 6. Hmm. Interesting idea. Because if you go 4, that kind of forces Tezuka to go 8, and then Deli could have played 7-3-4-6 safely in 9. That might have been a decent way to press. I think both of them were interesting ideas. Tezuka does play 1. And he's taking his time here, which he should after having made a real big mess up earlier. So, really good first game. I don't think the hand building is interesting on this rule set, though Tezuka may yet prove us wrong there. And I don't love no combo in rule sets in general, but the games of this have actually just been great. So I think I'm wrong. Um, like I like playing no combo. It's just it's never fun to go into a tournament round where you're like, oh great, I'm gonna play 30 draws because the margin of victory is so little, right? Or the margin needed to get victory is so large, the margin to draw is so small. But actually, the games have all been good that I've caught. Um, and I missed the Selder Smokes round, but that from a quick glance that looked really interesting and complex as well. So, um, yeah, good games, fun times. I don't know if they're going to keep going. I hope they don't. My voice needs a rest. Um, I have to do some other talking today, and I can feel my voice going. But all in all, a really, I think, interesting first game that you could mark up as just like a normal game. And in some ways it was, right? All the normal squares. Very normal sequence, not surprising squares at all. But the moves themselves did a lot. And there were, we'll check in a moment, but I think 1, 5, 6, 7, 9 instead of 3 was losing. And I think that was a really serious trap. I think that's very easy to lose after. All right, Deli does go not 2, which is not like illegal, right? But is they say he picked up 4, 6, 7, 4. Said he had 2 Tonberry Kings in his hand, but obviously has no winning chances because Tezuka can go 2, and Tezuka could go 2 with like 6, 7, 2, 5. That's what I would do here. I think 6, 7, 2, 5, and 2 is the funniest move, so I would have played there. Tezuka has a different sense of humor than I do, so we get a different tie. I'm really enjoying this matchup. Tezuka and Delial. It's 2 Topolovs. They will always make for a complex game. And for a viewer, for me, that is really a joy to watch, regardless of the rule set. I'm gonna go pop us over to the solver for a moment. I do not think it will find anything. I think this was a clean, good game of triple try. Now, it's easy to think that on this set, but if you look at the games that have been played till now, it has been a lot more dangerous than I think um, even necessarily the players thought. Though it has been more dangerous at different times. Like I was told by one player, I think I found the only tie, and the solver says, no, there were a bunch of ties, but they were all really scary, so I get why they thought that. And then in other games, players go, well, I think that was easy, and in fact, the solver says someone was winning. So we get our 5-5 tie. I will go check if they're going to play another game, but in the meantime, I will pop you over to the solver. I liked this move in 5. I also considered 9, so I'm going to have it run 9 at the same time. It's going to run this so slow, just because I'm curious if that worked. I liked Deli's move in 6. He also considered 4. He didn't say which card, but I think Tonberry is the assumption. So after Delhi's move in 6, Tezuka had 3 ties. 1, 5, 6, 7, and 9 lost to 5, 6, 4, 7, and we can see the, yep, exact line here. Nope, we cannot. I put in the rules wrong. Alright, forgot to take off combo. That's good to know. I'm glad I clicked the button because I was just going to stop there, but that means everything it said so far was meaningless and we're going to rerun it. It restarted for you, good. Right. Here, here. I'm also curious about here. So here. Delhi's curious about here. So this move concedes 7 ties, and the move Delhi played concedes 6 ties. Okay, something was winning somewhere. Wait up, something was winning somewhere. Where is it? Is it here? Is there a win here? No, this was good. I think that means my idea of 1, 5, 6, 7, and 9 was losing. Yep, that was a bad idea. All right, good for Tezuka. Delhi goes here. Now, I think this move is losing. And it is. Yep. And 3, 5, 7, 6 sweeps the endgame. So Tezuka very smartly plays in 3. And it's just a tie. And Tezuka has to sequence 1, then 8, but that's not a big deal. All right, great first game for them. Really enjoyed that one. I think really well played. And they're done for today, which is great because my voice can rest. But yeah, I thought that was superb.